I don't know if you guys have noticed, but social media lately has been kind of f***ed up and is due to playing the game of the algorithm. You see, in the pursuit of trying to create content, you've got to balance between asking yourself, what kind of creator do you really want to be? Because you want to be one who provides a ton of value, but at the same time, what drives engagement and more views isn't always going to be what you perceive to be the highest value. For instance, a guy like Dr. Mike has been receiving a lot of criticism in the past 6 to 12 months or so as they've really ramped up their views and their production quality with their content.
A lot of this content, I think, is not what they actually believe. It is just to drive engagement.
Which you might have your own personal views on. I mean, even outside of a guy like Dr. Mike, if you just open up any social media platform, you'll see within seconds so much content that's driven just by bullshit clickbait as opposed to trying to deliver value and quality information. And to be honest with you, this is something that I've struggled with a ton, and here's why. You see, I can create a video like this one here, and it's going to get a fair amount of views and a good amount of revenue generated. Collectively, this video took maybe 2 hours of filming and 3 hours of editing start to finish. Whereas a video like this one, where we may have invested around 15 to 30 hours of filming, scripting, concepting, editing, ended up bringing in next to nothing by comparison. And this is where I need your help. Because as much as I love creating content, I don't ever want it to get to a point where I'm just making content for the sake of making content for more views and then changing the style that I do to chase that.
I want to be able to maintain or increase the amount of value I can provide, but also do it in a way that is engaging and interesting for you.
So today we're going to go complete improv style with our creation. I'm going to go through a whole bunch of different questions and comments that I've gotten from you guys, and I'm going to create as much content as I can in different styles as possible, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you enjoy, what you dislike, what you don't want to see more of. Hopefully together we can start to turn around this whole fitness content creation game for the better. Thoughts on Jeff Nippard's recent video, full ROM versus lengthened partials. All right, there are two really big things you need to be considering when it comes to trying to understand research. First of all, don't get too caught up in the weeds as to what this specific study says, because there are a lot of issues with it, which we will cover a little bit today. But this really brings up a big global issue of people obsessing over research and science, saying, oh, this study now proves that lengthened partials and the big stretch is the #1 thing you should be worrying about when it comes to muscle growth. And that's not what this study or any other study is saying. All these are doing are giving us some more evidence to support the use of certain tools in our training. And sometimes this is really important. Something like pre-exhaust, for example, has been shown time and time again to be not as good as we thought. So even if you're working as hard as you can, you're better off avoiding pre-exhaust if your goal is gains. But above all else, the most important thing is just work fucking hard. Don't worry about all this stuff and just train hard and aim to progress each time. And that'll cover 95% of your gains. But now let's talk about this specific research. You know what some of the issues were? So you'd think they'd cover off a lot of bases, and they did. They used highly trained athletes, well, participants. They were controlled in how they would supervise them in the gym, and they controlled as many variables as possible. But there are a few big issues. Let's have a look. So this is one of the exercises they were doing, the Bayesian curl. So this here is the partial range of motion. And you can pretty quickly see that this is no longer just a biceps exercise, but it's becoming a whole body, shoulder, hikey, kind of weird, butt scratchy, wiping your ass exercise, more so than a biceps curl. And that's under supervision as well. There's big flaws in the execution of the exercise. Another participant, same kind of thing. We're seeing big changes in how they position their body from rep to rep. Now this is the full range of motion, which is why you see slight differences in the execution there. But it just goes to show, like, even if we have trained participants, even if we control as many variables as possible, there is still so much human error in these really well-designed research papers, because the supervision may not always be as optimal as it should be. And the setup of the exercises leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, look here, this guy here is meant to be challenging that lengthened position. But brother, you can hang out here for a very, very long fucking time. Even though your biceps is lengthened out and stretched, when that cable passes right directly through the joints, there's no tension there. I might as well be holding a dumbbell in my hand doing a dumbbell curl and just hanging out here. There is virtually zero tension on the muscle. It's not until I get to maybe here-ish where there is actually some challenge. But this first portion here, I'm moving that weight horizontally. The first portion here, he's moving the weight, well, he's moving his hand vertically, but there's zero tension there. So this here with this poor setup and poor execution is biasing the lengthened stretch partial range of motion to fail in this research. So when the results show that there, I think, was similar benefits, partial to full range, what we're actually seeing is the partial range was playing at a handicap. So that's one issue. Let's have a look over here and I'll show you guys what should have been done instead. When they were doing the biceps curl, if they want that lengthened position, yeah, stretch out the arm behind you. But again, here, I can hang out here for a long time. If all you did instead, about there-ish, now that's challenging there. Like for me to curl down, there is a little bit more force because while I'm being straightened out that direction, I've got to work down here. The similar kind of thing can be seen across a lot of the other exercises they were doing. And thanks to the guys who did a lot of attention to detail in their work, where they filmed all the participants, they managed as many variables as possible. But again, this is not to bag on Jeff or Dr. Wolf or Dr. Pack or any of the other research designers here. It's more so to highlight the issue with so much of this science-based bullshit, to be honest. Not this study's bullshit, but people getting hyper-focused on it because it's not without its limitations. Here's another example of some of the issues in exercise selection and setup. So they don't have this fancy piece of equipment available, which is totally fair enough. What they did choose to train the back though was a dumbbell row. So their partial range of motion was from here to here. Same kind of issue. Here, there is next to no resistance on your back muscles. Yes, they are stretched out, but the second you start moving, there's really no tension in that first range of motion. So this is setting things up for failure. If they had something fancy like this available where you could change where you load the plates up, you could really make a true lengthened partial biased exercise. So usually when you're doing a dumbbell row, the hard point is up here, and then down here is really, really easy, which is what makes their pick of a dumbbell row a pretty poor choice for lengthened bias or lengthened challenges. Oh, fucking hell. All right, if I can get the weight back here, this is pretty fucking easy to hang out and just talk to you guys because of how the weight's been displaced. This is the shortened position, and if I was doing a barbell row, 100 kilos would be fucking hard right now, but it's pretty easy. Honestly, it feels like nothing. When I get down to here, I feel like I'm about to just tear every muscle in my back. So if we were to set up a study that was to test partial lengthened range of motion versus a full range of motion, a better challenge or a better test would be to choose an exercise, row movement, where you can challenge that lengthened position significantly more versus challenging the whole range of motion significantly more. That would be, in my opinion, a better test to determine the efficacy of lengthened partials or lengthened position training over full range or over the shortened position. Unfortunately, these machines aren't always available, and that's what I'm trying to get at here. I don't want you to think that you now need to design the perfect study around that because it's unrealistic. But this is more so the case as to why you shouldn't put a lot of stock into a lot of these research papers and get too caught up in the weeds. A lot of the time, you're going to see so many flaws in the study that make it less and less telling as to what you should or should not do. And the fact is, lengthened bias training has been around for a very, very, very long time. I'm doing it back with John Meadows 10 years ago, doing it in my own bodybuilding training 15 years ago. It's been around for decades before that as well. It's nothing new. Something that allows you to push hard with effort and to extend that step further. And that's all that really matters. So don't worry about that. Just worry about how hard are you training in the gym and are you progressing? The end. What's the best advice you can give about core training? Probably the most popular ab exercise you'll see is a cable crunch. And I think it's a waste of time. And let me show you why. I shouldn't say waste of time, because I think that's a little bit of a strong, harsh label. It's still an exercise you can use, is why everybody does it. But there's a few humongous flaws with it. Like, that is the exercise. And I'm honestly trying to use some pretty good technique. But the first thing you might notice is, as I come down, my butt shoots back as well. So here to here, that's my hips just shifting back. Now, I know what you're gonna say. Eugene, just do the exercise properly with good technique. And that is totally valid. So let me show you that. Nice and stable, legs are down. I'm just going to focus on crunching through my abs and back up. Now, that's really challenging. It really is. I can feel my abs working a lot, and they are working a lot. The issue with this still remains is that there's no stability. And this is similar to me doing a lat pull down without having my legs locked in to the support pads. The second you get close to a failure point, you're going to start to shift backwards, not to necessarily cheat, but because it's a more efficient position and your body can go there very easily. So what are your options instead? You can still do cable crunches if you want, although I would try to find a way to stabilize your hips more, not just down here at the legs. But before we get there, my preferred option is to try to find something like a GHD, some kind of sit-up bench, and either lock your ankles in or lock your thighs in. And now we can focus purely on that one roll of the abs. We're going into extension of the spine and flexion of the spine. You can add load here with a resistance band. You can use dumbbells. You can use a barbell, whatever you want. You can even use a cable if you want to drag this across to a cable station and perform the exact same crunch motion. And now when I fail, I've got nowhere to hide. This is just going to be pure target stimulus to my core. Now, I know a lot of people don't have this piece of equipment available, but fortunately we have other options. Come with me if you want to live. Behind door number 1, we have the hyperextension, which a lot more gyms will typically have. Instead of being face down like this and doing your backy things or your buddy things, come around this side and you can do the exact same crunch motion, coming back and coming up. Now, I would set this a little bit higher because there my hips are off, which might mean this here is the pivot point, which means my hip flexors will work a lot harder because my hips are extending and my hips are flexing. But if we finagle this like that, now my hips are blocked off. So it's just my spine that opens up. Oh, that feels good. And up. And that's an option you can use. Now, Eugene, I don't have this. Well, lucky we have door number 2. Find yourself any kind of bench and anywhere you can anchor your legs into. We're using the one piece of equipment that you don't have in your gym, which is why you're asking me for an alternative. Anywhere you can anchor your feet under, block yourself off, and exact same thing. Getting a big stretch, crunching up. Again, I was showing you a variation because I very lazily set this up where my legs were straight, but more comfortable, a little bit easier. Bring the bench in a bit closer. Now my knees are bent, and now it's a little bit more targeted on the abs. Okay, this is a little bit gentler. Longer lever back here with the straight leg, more hips, and it's a lot harder. And, oh fuck. You can just sort of find what suits you. The big thing I want you thinking about here is what are you trying to achieve with the muscles of the core? We're focusing here on abs, which is just extension and flexion. How can we load this and challenge it in a progressive way long term, where you don't just get a giant pump today, but you can keep loading it, making it harder and harder over time, using whatever you have available. That can be specialized equipment. It can just be your bench and body weight. There are so many options out there. The same thing also applies to all your other core exercises, because core is not just here at the abs, it's also your obliques, it's also your deep transverse abdominis. You have all these other muscles here that work with rotation or anti-rotation, and you can apply the exact same principles there. Should I have a snack pre-workout? I train first thing in AM with an espresso shot to start. Whether or not you need to be eating something pre-workout or not will come down to answering this question for yourself, because we can go back and forth about all the science and the research, but it really comes down to your personal context, which is what's most important. So pre-workout nutrition is all about optimizing your performance and your recovery. A couple of things will make it more or less relevant to you and your certain situation. First of all is looking at your overall intake of calories, carbohydrates, and protein. If you're eating throughout the entire day enough protein, enough calories, and enough carbs, you're probably going to find that having extra pre-workout has a very minimal, if any, effect on your training performances. But if you're in a calorie deficit because you're dieting because you're trying to lose fat, you might find it hard to get enough carbohydrates and calories in, and you might then feel in your workouts that you need that little bit of extra boost pre-workout to help pull you through. A couple of things you can do to mitigate this though is looking at what you're having in the night before. So even if you're having low calories and low carbohydrates, if you had enough of those carbohydrates backloaded in your final meal before bed, you'll often find that you're adequately fueled to have a good workout even after that 6 to 9 hour fast when you're sleeping. Another thing to keep in mind here is intra-workout nutrition. So if you're having some carbohydrate or energy drink or even just lollies during your workout, that might be enough to help to improve that performance just that little bit during your session in and out of a calorie deficit. And the final thing is post-workout, because a lot of the replenishment of any lost glycogen or energy you'll get from the workout will be replenished immediately post-workout. So if you're getting in a decent amount of carbohydrates and protein for amino acids in after your workout, that's probably going to carry you over through to the next workout completely fine. Again, along with all the other calories and protein you're going to have through the rest of the day. That's all the geeky stuff. What does it really mean for you? You might find that you still need to feel like you have something in your stomach pre-workout, which is totally fine. I'm the same. I don't like training fasted, despite what all the research might say. So I'm gonna eat something, especially if I'm waking up and going straight to the gym from there with just a coffee in me. The big things I'm looking for are digestibility. So I'll usually choose something like a piece of fruit, maybe a protein shake, and maybe things like lollies. I prefer lollies over something like a carbohydrate drink just because it's tastier and more fun to chew something than it is to suck down another drink. This is one of those things where you can make so many different it depends back and forth case-by-case scenarios to decide whether or not you should be having a pre-workout snack. But ultimately, keep it basic, keep it simple. Ask yourself, are you performing well? Are you recovering well from your workouts? And if you're not, then a pre-workout meal might help. Most people are really screwing this up because they're not tracking their workouts and tracking their progress long-term, which is why I would highly recommend you download Ganbaru Method if you don't have it already and start following a structured, progressive plan and tracking your workouts. Even if you're not following any of my programs, you can follow other people's programs or build your own. Link in description. Check it out. Support me in this channel. Best bodyweight movement to target traps if you don't have a bar. Super common question where people are trying to do an exercise or train a muscle, but they don't have the same piece of equipment available. What can you do instead? How do you filter through all the noise to work out for yourself? What's the best choice? Here's how. You get yourself an anatomy chart and you work out what is the muscle you're trying to train here. And we have the trap muscles, and we want to understand what do these things do, and that will then help us understand why we do certain exercises normally and how to pick better options based on what you have available. As you can see back here, they run across, they run up. Two main functions. They bring the, oh, your scapula is stuck, buddy, I'm sorry. But they raise your shoulder blades up and they bring your shoulder blades in together, or they do this and they do this, which is why when you think of most exercises for traps, looking at just your basic shrug exercise with dumbbells or barbells. Now, a couple of extra nerdy tidbits. Most people are doing them right here, but if you look at how these fibers are running and the fact that they don't just do this, but they also do this retraction or squeezing back together motion, you might find it more comfortable and better to bring your arms a little bit wider. Because as you do that, your shoulder blades open out a bit more. And when you shrug, you get not just elevation, but also some of that squeezy back, which is why my all-time favorite exercise is a Kelso shrug. Bent forwards, on a sit machine, shrugging up and down. But you don't have that available. That's no help to you. What are we gonna do? We just need to be loading this motion and loading this motion, with whatever you have. You can literally do this just with body weight. So you can find a way to bend over and lean forwards on a bench, or just lean forwards like this. And all we want to do is have this shrugging and retraction motion. So the trap 3 raise is where we'd raise your arms up like that. And as I do this, my shoulder blades are squeezing back at the top and I'm elevating upwards. Bent forwards here to actually make my hands weigh something, but I'm gonna retract and shrug up and raise and come back down. You can add a couple of water bottles to your hands, and trust me, this will completely roast that whole upper back area. Now, if you want to get super duper advanced, you could do things like handstand shrugs, and that would hit a very, very similar kind of region for the upper back. You'd be surprised at how challenging that stuff is. But again, most important is you want to find exercises that meet the goals of the anatomy, what we're trying to work here, and that are accessible to you. Are the protein bars really good in protein, or they are also like normal chocolates? We are going to get a chocolate bar. Shut up, Jeff. We've made it. Did you film that? No. Okay. Yeah, this feels weird. I don't know how people do vlogging like this. This is definitely out of my comfort zone right now. Oh, these grenade ones are fucking good too. They're not the Oreo. Oh my God, they're out of Oreo. They're out of Oreo. That's disappointing. That's the greatest flavor. One time, I thought I bought these ones by accident, thinking that they were the Oreo ones, and they're not. They're fucking horrible. Yuck. You know, I can't drive without rear view cameras anymore. I mean, I could barely drive with them in the past. So the actual question is, are protein bars really good in protein? Yes, a protein bar like this does have a good amount of protein in it. You're going to get 15 grams per bar. But if we zoom out a little bit more and let's look at this as a food in general, is it good? Is it bad? What's happening? I mean, I can take something like this and say, okay, this protein bar is 60 grams and it gives me 15 grams of protein and 212 calories. This chocolate bar is 50 grams, so it's smaller, but it is 267 calories, so it's higher calorie. Now, straight away, you might think, this is shit and this is good. But we have more to consider. So you might see stuff out in social media saying, this is 100 calories of a protein bar and this is 100 calories of chocolate. And it quantifies things as good calories versus bad calories, and that not all calories are created equal. Now, a couple of bones to pick with this. First of all, not to sound like an asshole, but a calorie is a calorie, and all calories are created equal because calories are a unit of measurement, just like this unit of measurement here. So if I'm measuring, say, 20 centimeters or however many inches that is in freedom units, I could measure 20 centimeters in length here of this, or I could measure 20 centimeters of this bad boy, and they are obviously different things. I can take a drink bottle and I can fill it up with a liter or several cups of a liquid of water, or I could fill it up with soft drink. And for all intents and purposes, that liter or those cups are all the same. They're all created equal. A cup is a cup is a cup, an inch is an inch is an inch, a meter is a meter is a meter. That's just my very nerdy over the top way of saying all calories are created equal. But more importantly, hyper-focusing on just the calorie content of these certain foods to quantify something as good or bad is very, very misleading. There is so much more to food than pure calories, and even so much more to food than just pure protein, and protein making something better or worse. Because what if I've already hit my protein content for the day? Then something like this may not necessarily be something that is helpful for me. Maybe I need to get more carbohydrates, maybe I need to get more calories, maybe I need to get more fats into my diet, and this may not be the best choice to be getting carbohydrates and fats into your diet, but it is a choice that you can make, especially if you have the room to play with adding in something like this. See, the reason why I try to stay out of a lot of these discussions around nutrition is because it gets so campy and so one-sided, saying, oh, you must do carnivore, or this is bad food, this has got processed foods in it, this has got high protein, this is low protein, it's bullshit. And it creates a lot more confusion, and it shifts the focus away from the pure principles of calories and macronutrients, and most importantly, your personal preferences and finding what fits into your lifestyle. And it makes you feel bad or guilty about making certain choices that, for all intents and purposes, could be really good choices for you to be making around your nutrition. We don't need to be demonizing specific foods and saying something's good or bad, because even something like this, which could be objectively saying it's a good thing for you personally because it's high protein, it could also be completely horrible for you because maybe this turns your digestion to absolute shit and you start blowing out your asshole because of the artificial sweeteners in here. Again, it's not that artificial sweeteners are bad, but they might be for you. They're completely fine for me, unless if I have 4 of these a day, which I have done sometimes, and then that's a really bad time. But I guess where I'm really going with all of this is when you're looking at nutrition, try to avoid quantifying something as good and bad, but instead look at it more from its overall qualities. This has got more protein and less calories than this. This is fucking delicious. This can also be delicious to some of you, but to those of you who don't like artificial sweeteners, it'll be absolutely disgusting. This might also be higher protein, but that high protein content could also be a negative thing based on your current intake. And none of these discussions around these individual foods really talk about how it fits into an overall nutrition, diet, lifestyle plan for you and how that takes into account everything else that you're eating in a day. Most important thing when it comes to making these choices around nutrition is try to match it to a principle of energy balance, or how many calories do you need, or macronutrients of how many protein, carbs, and fats do you need in a day. And then things like digestibility, personal preference, enjoyment, and convenience, and that will help you determine whether a food is truly good or bad for you personally, but that doesn't mean it's going to be good or bad for somebody else. Hopefully you're enjoying things so far. Let me know down below which piece you've enjoyed, which piece you haven't enjoyed, what you want to see more of. Before we go though, I want to quickly rapid fire through a few different questions because again, this is one of the issues that I struggle with, where I get so many really, really good questions that I want to create content around, but to be perfectly honest with you, it doesn't fit anywhere. I think these questions are interesting and I think the answers can be really helpful, but it's not enough to make a full video on. It's not something that I can see right now being super interesting and engaging. But if you have any suggestions as we go through these, let me know down below as well and we'll keep working for you. How difficult is muscle loss during a cut? If I go down 2 kgs on my average, some of that muscle, I'm guessing this fella's asking, if he's gone 2 kilos down below his average body weight, has he lost some muscle? And you know, that's a very variable thing. But the most important question is, how difficult is muscle loss during a cut? It's quite challenging. If you're eating enough protein and you're training with a sufficient amount of volume and not completely overdoing things, then you're not gonna lose muscle until maybe the very end of a bodybuilding prep when you're absolutely dick skin lean, eating well below your maintenance calories. Then you might be at risk of muscle loss. But for 99.9% of you who aren't in that scenario, you're probably not gonna be losing muscle. If you want to double check, just keep track of all of your lifts. You wanna make sure you see your numbers at least maintaining on the majority of exercises in the gym. If it's trending downwards and trending downwards significantly, like I like 10-20% at most to see it coming downwards, then you might start to say, okay, maybe you are losing muscle, at risk of losing muscle, but it could also just be fatigue from sleep, nutrition, stress, etc., etc. And you'll find that if you just mitigate those things, performance will go right back up. Thoughts on heavy weighted pull-ups and dips as main exercises in the workouts? They're great exercises. You know, you have compound exercises that are progressive. You can push them hard and keep challenging yourself with adding more weight over time. It takes muscle through full range of motion. Big wins. The best approach to weight training after a 3-month break. So don't need to overcomplicate this. You just start somewhere and just see what happens. You can pick the most advanced, super duper steroid 10,000 program out there, and you can try that after a 3-month break. And even then, you'll very quickly find that it's too much and you'll scale things back. So don't overthink it, you just gotta start somewhere. I personally like to do something like a full body high frequency program with a lower intensity and then just slowly scale it up. I pick full body because it means I can hit all my muscles with just the minimum effective dose and I can give them more frequent exposures to training to rapidly get myself back to that time off period, because you'll find a lot of that relearning and coming back to where you once were, that relearning process is just about skill acquisition or getting comfortable with moving your body around again, and all that extra soreness you might experience, it'll dissipate faster if you're training more regularly. Do you think you'll ever be content with the app, or will you try to keep evolving it? I am always ticking my brain over in terms of how to better serve all the members on Gambaru to give them the best training experience possible, and the easiest and the most effortless one to follow as well. This past 2 years alone, we've invested so much money and so much time into creating not just new programs, but new features to make it just more user-friendly, but there's still more work to be done. And honestly, I don't see the work ever being done, because it's not just about saying, here's a program, go follow it at the end. It's about what extra little things can make that journey more effortless for you, more enjoyable for you, and more engaging for you. Because the most important thing that I think people don't realize when it comes to training is it's not about the perfect workout, it's not about the perfect program. It's about having the right environment set up that guarantees success for you. And it's not just about saying this biceps exercise is going to cause you to grow 20% more muscle than the other one. It's more about saying what takes out all the guesswork and helps you enjoy the process more, whether it's more community engagement, whether it's more little gamification of an app, or it's a more user-friendly interface. All these things can always be improved, and that's where my head is always going to. Is doing more exercises in a single workout or doing less better for muscle growth? Okay, so all else being equal, the less you can do in a workout, the more you're going to get out of every single one of those exercises. Just imagine a leg day. I'm training quads and I did 10 exercises. I did barbell squats, I did hack squats, I did pendulum squats, I did leg press, I did a split squat, I did leg extension, I did C-squat, I did reverse Nordic, and I'm running out of exercises. You all know, no matter how many steroids I take or how much caffeine and stimulants I'm on, those last 2 exercises are going to be an afterthought. And probably after the first 2 or 3, it's going to be an afterthought. And the same thing applies to if I'm doing a full body day, if I'm doing a full upper day or a full lower day. The more you chunk into the workout, you're going to get less and less and less stimulus out of it, and you're going to get more and more and more fatigue out of every single one of those exercises. So wherever you can, try to reduce. That's it. I'm going to leave it there, guys. Thoughts on juggling training goals? Oh, not juggling. Juggling different goals of hypertrophy, flexibility, sport. I thought, we got a fucking clown here. I'm gonna leave it at that, guys, because we can go on and on and on with more and more questions, but that's not what this video is meant to be about. It's meant to be about finding what formats do you enjoy. Hopefully you found something today that you've enjoyed, because I've really enjoyed making this stuff. Thanks for sticking around all the way to the end of this video. It helped that algorithm even more, and I'll see you guys next time.